a silent, glittering tapestry of 10 billion stars. To Admiral Cathra, it was not a thing of beauty, but a map of absolute knowledge, a dominion of data where every spark of light was catalogued, quantified, and controlled. For 3 millennia, the complete species registry had been the unshakable scripture of the galactic dominion, an omniscient chronicle that left no civilization unnamed, no weapon unmeasured, no threat unforeseen. Its perfection was the bedrock of empire, and its silence was a promise. There were no more surprises in the cosmos. Like, subscribe, and share this story if you dare to imagine what waits in the dark between the stars. Comment below with your theory. Are we the hunters in this universe, or are we the prey? Yet on this day, the scripture lied. The dissonance began not with a roar, but with a tremor in a subordinate's voice. Sub-Commander Vexen, whose scales had never flushed to the anxious yellow now bleeding across his throat, delivered the heresy. Anomaly in Sector 7439, Admiral. A Vorak raiding fleet. Obliterated. Cathra's primary eyes locked onto him, her secondary set never ceasing their ceaseless dance across the flowing streams of data. The Vorak were galactic parasites, swift and vicious, their raids a bloody constant in the ledger of chaos. Which species engaged them? That is the problem. Vexen's voice was a hushed scrape against the quiet hum of the chamber. We do not know. The words hung cold and impossible. Cathra turned fully from her console, the soft luminescence of the galactic map casting her purple features in sharp relief. She gestured, and the sector materialized before them. A sparse frontier of dead stars and mineral-rich rocks, nominally under the peaceful Zalani Trading Union. A red icon pulsed balefully near an unnamed, unsurveyed system. Show me. The damaged schematics unfolded like a forensic nightmare. 12 Vorak ships, each a masterpiece of predatory engineering, were not merely defeated. They were deconstructed. Kinetic impacts of staggering power had struck with surgical, almost artistic cruelty, engine clusters, shield emitters, bridge modules, each target chosen to render the vessel a dead, drifting shell in seconds. The shields, the automated, instant response shields that were a raider's reflex, showed no activation signatures. They had never even flickered to life. The attacks came faster than thought. Vexen murmured, his scales now a deep, worried ochre. The projectiles, primitive tungsten iron alloy. Yet the velocities, Admiral, the physics are implausible. The precision is beyond our finest tactical AIs. A cold, forgotten sensation, centuries absent, uncoiled in Cathra's gut. Uncertainty. It was a taste like static, a void where data should be. She cross-referenced the registry. The unnamed system held a third planet, classed as a pre-industrial chemical signature world. It was a background whisper, a footnote. It could not house the architect of this celestial butcher's work. Dispatch the wisdom eternal, she ordered, the command echoing in the vast space. Full spectral analysis. I want the shadows of this mystery illuminated. As Vexen worked, Cathra delved into the Vorak files. This was no minor pack. This was War Captain Skeletha's personal Fong, equipped with bleeding-edge jump drives and plasma casters that could scar a continent. Their demise was not an accident. It was a statement, and the only language spoken here was one of absolute, overwhelming force. The unease curdled into a deeper dread when Vexen's search algorithms, cast wider, hooked into darker waters. Admiral, we are not the first to find such graveyards. The galactic map shimmered, and 3 new crimson markers bled into existence, scattered across the sparse frontier like wounds. A Kronar hunting pack, vanished 6 months prior. Zephyrian scout flotillas, disintegrated. Mandari pirates erased. Each incident filed away, dismissed as interspecies skirmishes, local enforcement. No one had connected the dots staining the void. Cathra watched, her blood cooling, as Vexen plotted a theoretical sphere of influence from the unnamed system. The sphere, assuming modest faster-than-light capability, bloomed outward, a perfect, chilling bubble that encompassed every single attack site. 100 light-years, Vexen whispered, the sound swallowed by the enormity of the display. They have not just defended a system, Admiral. They have been silently, surgically, sanitizing a territory. The foundation of Cathra's reality, the registry, the dominion, 3,000 years of ordered certainty, crackled with fault lines. Something was out there in the curated dark. Something that studied, that learned, that struck with a patience measured in years and a fury measured in relativistic impacts. Something that had looked upon the galaxy's predators and had not run, but had instead prepared a most elaborate and final welcome. Her comm line chimed, a priority channel from the edge of the mystery. The face of Commander Zaxxon, captain of the Wisdom Eternal, filled a screen. His usual scholarly calm was etched with a stark, professional alarm. Admiral, we have arrived. The third planet is inhabited, intelligent, organized, and they have been watching us since we crossed the heliopause. Report, Commander. What are we dealing with? Above to give it a try. Enjoy using text-to-speech. They call themselves humans, Zaxxon said, the unfamiliar word strange on his tongue. Their technology is a paradox. Primitive fusion drives, chemical rocket signatures, early industrial EM clutter. But Admiral, their orbital space is laced with a defensive satellite network of chilling sophistication. And they are hailing us in a language our matrices cannot begin to parse. It is alien, truly alien. Cathra leaned forward. Their disposition? Zaxxon's image seemed to harden. They are not afraid. They have issued a warning. We are in protected space. They have requested, no, instructed us to state our purpose. He paused, his next words dropping like stones. And they mentioned the Vorak. They know why we are here. The command center, for all its immense size, seemed to press in on Cathra. The registry was incomplete. The galaxy held a ghost with teeth, with patience, and with a very clear understanding of borders. Maintain position, Commander. Do not provoke. We are shifting from investigation to first contact. Record everything. But even as she gave the order, Cathra knew with a cold, tactical certainty that first contact had already happened long ago. The humans hadn't been discovered today. They had simply chosen, finally, to stop hiding in plain sight. And their opening communique to the galaxy had been written in the shattered hulls of the Vorak. The Wisdom Eternal held its position at the system's edge, a lone jewel of Dominion science against the deep velvet of unexplored space. On the main viewer, the blue-white marble of the human world, Earth, spun with a deceptively serene beauty. Commander Zaxxon studied the tactical overlay. Dozens of small, crude signatures were rising from the planet, moving with a coordination that belied their primitive drive signatures. They were falling into an elegant, encirclement pattern around his ship. They are maneuvering like a school of lethal fish. His tactical officer, Venter, noted, a trace of professional admiration in his voice. No wasted movement. They use planetary gravity, atmospheric friction. It's unorthodox. Brilliantly unorthodox. The communications officer, Talana, looked up, her frills twitching. Another transmission, Commander. They have established a basic mathematical lexicon. They are asking questions about our propulsion, our power source. She frowned at her console. The subtext is an interrogation. They are reverse engineering us in real time through conversation. Zaxxon felt a profound dislocation. This was not how first contact with a pre-FTL species was meant to unfold. They should have been in awe or fear or desperate curiosity. Not this calm, analytical dissection. Commander! The science officer, Ulick, broke the tension, his voice sharp. Long-range passive scans are resolving additional debris fields, extensive ones. In the asteroid belt and Lagrangian points, I am reading Vorak alloy fragments, Chronar bioceramics, Zephyrian quantum crystalline hull material. His hands flew over his panel. There are multiple fleets here, sir. A graveyard. Some wreckage is over 2 years old. The bridge fell silent. The hum of the ship's systems suddenly loud. The approaching human vessels, 8 small, seemingly fragile things, continued their deliberate advance. Zaxxon looked from their blinking icons to the newly revealed scarlet markers of mass death on his tactical screen. A chill, deeper than the void outside, seeped into his bones. These weren't just defenders. They were gardeners, pruning the violent weeds from their little corner of the galaxy. And they had been doing it with terrifying efficiency, in total secrecy, for years. Sir, Venter said quietly, the lead human vessel is powering up what appear to be magnetic rail launchers. Primitive kinetics, the same signature as the Vorak wreckage. A choice crystallized before Zaxxon, clear and cold. He commanded a Dominion science vessel. Its shields could weather a small nova. Its weapons could scorch a continent. To retreat from 8 pre-industrial craft was unthinkable, a career-ending disgrace. It was the logical, the only course of action for a Dominion officer. But logic, he realized with dawning horror, was a language these humans had already rewritten. They had turned physics into a weapon, patience into a strategy, and isolation into an impregnable fortress. To fight them was to step into a trap whose dimensions he could not see. Helm, Zaxxon heard his own voice, calm and final. Plot a course out of the system. Minimum safe distance. Do not make any aggressive maneuvers. Commander? His navigator asked, disbelief plain. Zaxxon did not turn from the viewer, from the peaceful, deadly world below. Navigator, we are not retreating from ships. We are withdrawing from a principle. And that principle has already killed everyone arrogant enough to challenge it. As the Wisdom Eternal turned its mighty flank, a final, clean transmission came from the human vessel. Talana translated, her voice soft with awe. It says, wisdom is not just knowing, but knowing what you do not know. A wise choice. Safe travels. The human ships broke their encirclement, falling back toward their world without another word. They had not needed to fire a shot. They had won the encounter simply by revealing the board upon which they played, and the pieces they had already taken. In her command center light years away, Admiral Cathra received Zaxxon's full report. The data streams flowed, sensor logs, comm transcripts, spectral analyses of the ghost fleets. The evidence was irrefutable, a monument to Dominion blindness. She stood before the galactic map, the single, unnamed system now glowing with a sinister, persistent light. She opened a new file in the complete species registry. The cursor blinked, a heartbeat in the digital silence. Species designation. Human. Homeworld. Earth. Sol system. Status. Uncontacted/independent. Threat assessment. Pending. Initial analysis. Technological profile paradoxical. Demonstrates strategic patience measured in decades. Tactical adaptation rate. Extraordinary. Recommendation. Extreme caution. This species does not fear the galaxy. It has been studying it. She saved the entry, the act feeling less like documentation and more like a warning carved onto a tomb. The galaxy had just grown infinitely larger, and the Dominion infinitely smaller. The age of absolute knowledge was over. A new age had begun, the age of the unknown. And the unknown, it seemed, was brilliantly, devastatingly, and patiently armed. The report from Commander Zaxxon was not a data packet. It was a seismic shock that traveled through the ossified bones of the Dominion at light speed. In the stratified halls of power, it was met with a spectrum of denial, cold, furious, and absolute. A single, pre-FTL species could not defy the cosmic order. The registry could not be wrong. Yet, in the silent, pressurized chamber of her own mind, Admiral Cathra knew the truth. They had not encountered an anomaly. They had met a predator of a new kind, one that hunted not with claws, but with calculus, But if the Dominion's bureaucracy was slow to accept, the Kronar Imperium operated on a simpler, more visceral code. Honor, once bloodied, demanded blood in return. The destruction of the Bone Crusher was not a tactical loss. It was a spiritual affront, a scar upon the collective soul of a warrior race. And so, War Captain Thakor, his carapace still vibrating with the hum of his new dreadnought's living heart, did not request permission from the Dominion. He carved a vengeful path through the void, his vessel, the Crimson Tide, a 3-kilometer testament to biotech fury, its weapon ports glowing with the captured light of dying stars. His approach to the Sol system was not stealthy. It was a proclamation. Energy signatures bloomed on scanners like violent flowers, and his comms broadcast the Kronar war chant, a deep, rhythmic thrum of aggression meant to paralyze prey. He expected to see the human ships scatter, to sense the electromagnetic stink of fear. He saw neither. Instead, a calm, filtered voice greeted him on the Kronar military band, speaking his language with flawless, accentless precision. Kronar vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force Vessel Defiant. You are entering sovereign human space. State your purpose. The sheer, placid audacity of it stole Thakur's breath for a second. Sovereign. The word, applied to a single planet of primitives, was a joke in such poor taste it crossed into blasphemy. I am War Captain Thakur of the Crimson Tide, he broadcast, his voice a tectonic rumble. I am the instrument of Kronar justice. You destroyed our kin. You will surrender those responsible, or I will peel your world apart to find them. The response was not defiance, but a patient, chilling correction. War Captain. The Bone Crusher attacked without provocation after multiple warnings. His fate was self-inflicted. We strongly advise you to alter course. There is no justice to be found here, only another lesson you cannot afford to learn. On his bridge, Thakur's four massive arms clenched, the sound like grinding stones. Around him, his crew began the deep-throated chant, the ship's living corridors amplifying the sound into a physical pressure. He watched the tactical sphere. The human ship's 60 small, laughable signatures were moving, but not to form a defensive line. They were dispersing. Some darted toward the asteroid belt. Others fell into high orbital lanes. A few seemed to be positioning themselves behind his mighty vessel, a pointless maneuver against a ship that could turn its entire broadside into a wall of plasma. They are amateurs. His tactical officer snarled, mandibles clacking. No formation, no cohesion. It is fear madness. But a colder, older part of Thakur's warrior instinct prickled. This was not the chaotic scatter of prey. It was too deliberate, too symmetrical. It looked less like a defense and more like the opening moves of a game whose rules he did not know. Dominion vessel on emergency channel, his comms officer interrupted. They beg for restraint. They speak of diplomacy. Thakur silenced the channel with a swipe of his claw. Diplomacy is the echo of cowardice. All batteries target the lead human ship, the Defiant. Burn it from the void. The Crimson Tide shuddered as its primary bioplasma cannons charged, drawing energy from the fusion heart of the living coral that formed its spine. The sound was a gathering storm, a deep, organic thrum that vibrated in the teeth of every crew member. Targeting solutions locked, painting the small, crude vessel on the main viewer. Firing in 10 seconds, War Captain. War Captain! The sensor officer's voice cut through the ritual, sharp with surprise. The human ships are launching. Multiple kinetic projectiles. Trajectory convergent on us. On the tactical display, dozens of tiny, simple icons, no energy signatures, no warp trails, began accelerating. Thakur watched them with contempt. Solid slugs. Primitive ballistics. Against the Crimson Tide's multi-layered energy shields and living, self-regenerating armor, they were less than insects. Ignore them. Fire main cannons. The world outside the viewport turned white as torrents of star-hot plasma lanced toward the Defiant. In the heartbeat before impact, the small human ship, with an acceleration that defied its chemical rocket profile, simply wasn't there. It used the gravity well of a passing moonlet, a slingshot maneuver so perfectly calculated it seemed preordained, and vanished behind a tumbling asteroid. "Target evaded," the weapons officer roared. "The projectiles," the sensor officer cried out, his scales blanching. "Impact in 5 seconds. Their velocity." "War captain, the readings are impossible." The first tungsten rod struck the Crimson Tide's forward shields not as a missile strikes, but as a god's hammer falls. The energy matrices, designed to diffuse and dissipate phased energy and explosive force, had no doctrine for an inert mass arriving at 0.9 C. The shields did not buckle. They shattered, a silent, spectacular detonation of light as the generators overloaded and died. The rod, barely scarred, continued its journey and struck the living armor hull. The sound was not an explosion, but a deep, sickening crunch thud, the sound of a mountain being punched. The bridge lurched. Atmosphere alarms screamed as the entire forward section was vented into space. "Hull breach! Sector 1 through 7 gone. Primary weapon grid offline." Before Thakor could process the order, more rods arrived. Not a barrage, but a symphony of destruction. Each impact was a precise, devastating note. One struck the nexus of the port plasma battery, killing the living weapon in its cradle. Another speared through 3 decks to obliterate the secondary shield capacitor. A third shattered the main sensor array. There was no randomness. It was a systematic, unhurried disassembly of a living being. "They are using our own active scans against us," the tactical officer shrieked, his voice raw with understanding. "Every ping we send, they map the reflections. They see our internals. They know where to hit. Cease active scanning. Passive only." Thakor bellowed, but the order was a plea into a hurricane. The damage was algorithmic, inevitable. The human ships, those tiny, darting specks, were not individual combatants. They were neurons in a single, distributed mind. Targeting data flowed between them in impossible, lagless streams. When the Crimson Tide focused on one, 3 others fired from blind spots. They used asteroid cover, planetary radio shadows, even the debris of their previous victims as concealment. They fought not a battle, but a perfect, multivariable equation where the Crimson Tide was the only unknown, being ruthlessly solved. Another volley. Life support centers, engine coolant lines, neural interface nodes for the living ship. Each hit crippled a system, each crippling slowed the response, making the next hit easier. Thakor stared at his command screens, watching his magnificent dreadnought, a fortress that had shattered worlds, being reduced to a bleeding, paralyzed hulk by what amounted to sharpened rocks. A new transmission arrived, Captain Chen's voice still calm, devoid of gloating, carrying only a terrible, final practicality. "War Captain Thakor, your vessel has suffered catastrophic systems failure. We detect imminent structural collapse in your port spine. We offer safe passage for your escape pods. This offer is final." The bridge was a panorama of flashing crimson alerts and the groans of dying biomechanics. His crew, brave warriors all, looked to him. He saw not fear of death, but the dawning horror of a death without honor, without even a comprehensible enemy. They were being dismantled by a ghost. With an effort that cracked something deep inside his warrior spirit, Thakor gave the order. "All crew, abandon ship." The evacuation was a silent, efficient funeral procession. As his own pod ejected, Thakor watched through the viewport. The human ships, having ceased fire, held their positions. Then, as 20 vessels fired a final, simultaneous salvo. 20 tungsten rods converged on the Crimson Tide's central fusion heart. The living dreadnought, for one brilliant, agonizing moment, became a small, terrible star. Then it vanished, leaving only an expanding cloud of ionized coral and memories. In the silent aftermath, his calm crackled. "Captain Chen, Your pods will not be molested, War Captain. Coordinates for the nearest Kronar outpost have been transmitted. Deliver this message to your Imperium. Humanity is here. This space is ours. We will defend it. The choice for peace or more lessons is, and has always been, yours. Thakor found his voice, not one of rage, but of a humbled, profound need to understand. Human Captain, how? Your ships are primitive. Your weapons are crude. How did you do this? The reply was immediate, and it unveiled a truth far more terrifying than any weapon. War Captain, for decades, your Imperium has broadcast every tactical manual, every ship schematic, every after-action report on open channels. We listened. We learned. We built our strategy not on matching your strength, but on exploiting the certainty of your strength. You did not lose to primitive ships today. You lost to 40 years of patient, silent study. The communication ended. Thakor floated in the silence of his pod, the glowing debris of his ship reflecting in his compound eyes. The universe had just reordered itself. The strong did not always conquer. Sometimes the strong were merely the most predictable. And in the dark, something infinitely patient had been taking notes. The news of the Crimson Tide's fate did not merely reach Admiral Cathra. It detonated in the heart of the Dominion Council. The Kronar, humiliated and raging, demanded a crusade. The mercantile guilds saw an unprecedented, untapped market suddenly guarded by an unfathomable weapon. The pacifist factions saw the first glimmer of a check on unchecked imperial power. The chamber was a vortex of shouting, posturing, and primal fear. Cathra stood before them, an island of grim data in a sea of emotion. She played the sensor logs from the Wisdom Eternal, the tactical reconstruction of the Crimson Tide's annihilation. She showed them the pattern. Not just 2 battles, but a dozen, spanning 2 years, each a custom-designed defeat for a different species' military doctrine. They are not just defending, she stated, her voice cutting through the din. They are conducting field experiments. Each engagement is a live-fire test of a new counter-strategy. The Vorak taught them about speed and surprise. The Kronar taught them about brute force and honor-bound predictability. The Zephyrians taught them about technological over-reliance. They are building a library of our defeats, and they are the only ones with a copy. High Chancellor Mordak, ancient and weary, steepled his manipulative digits. Your assessment, Admiral. If we send the 5th Battle Fleet with orbital bombardiers and planet breakers, what is the outcome? Cathra met his gaze. She had run the simulations. The results were not victory or loss, but a cascade of grim variables. High Chancellor, they have had 40 years to prepare for that exact scenario. They know our fleet compositions, our bombardment patterns, our escalation protocols. They have hidden their true industrial and population centers. They have likely built their entire civilization, from power grids to cities, with stealth, dispersion, and redundancy as primary design principles. We might glass continents. We would not break their will. And then, she paused. And then we would learn what a cornered, brilliant, and now openly hostile humanity is capable of. They would stop experimenting and start exterminating. The cost would be galactic. So we capitulate? Snarled Counselor Vexith. We bow to a species of apes with railguns? We acknowledge a new power dynamic, Cathra corrected, her tone final. We are not dealing with a primitive tribe. We are dealing with a strategic intelligence of unprecedented patience and adaptability. They have proven they cannot be conquered by force. Therefore, the only rational move is to change the game. Her recommendation, laid bare in a confidential memo to the Chancellor, was heresy wrapped in pragmatism. Offer recognition, not as a subject but as a sovereign peer. Establish a diplomatic channel. Study them as they have studied us. Contain them not with warships, but with the gravity of respect and the delicate web of mutual interest. The debate raged for days. But in the end, Mordak, a ruler who had sustained an empire for centuries, understood the raw calculus of survival. Fighting an enemy you understood was war. Fighting an enemy who understood you better than you understood yourself was suicide. The order was given. Admiral Cathra would return to the Sol system, not with a fleet but with a single, lavishly equipped diplomatic cutter, the Accord. Its holds contained not weapons, but cultural archives, scientific treatises, and a charter for mutual non-aggression. It was the most profound concession the Dominion had ever made. As the Accord slipped into the serene blue stillness of the Sol system, Cathra felt the weight of history. She was not making first contact. She was admitting defeat in a war humanity had fought and won before anyone else had even known they were a participant. She stood on the observation deck, watching the human orbital station grow in the viewport. It was sleek, functional, and covered in sensor arrays of disturbingly advanced design. It did not look like a primitive outpost. It looked like an eye, calmly regarding them. A clean, pressurized tunnel extended from the station, mating with the Accord's airlock with silent efficiency. There were no guards, no overt displays of power. Only a single human woman waiting in a sparse, elegant meeting room. Dr. Elena Vasquez of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. She was small by galactic standards and unarmed. Her power did not reside in her physique. It resided in her eyes, dark, impossibly deep, and holding a knowledge of Cathra, her mission, and likely her deepest fears, that was as unsettling as any weapon. Admiral Cathra, Vasquez said, a small, unreadable smile on her lips. Welcome back to the Sol system. We've been expecting you. The air in the human meeting room was cool, odorless, and carried a silence so profound it felt like a physical substance. Admiral Cathra, accustomed to the low hum of Dominion vessels or the organic thrum of living stations, found the quietude unnerving. It was the silence of absolute control of machines so perfect they whispered. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood before her, a study in understated authority. There were no weapons on the walls, no guards at the door, no holographic displays of military might. The power here was not displayed. It was implied, woven into the very fabric of the sterile, efficient space. Admiral, Vasquez began, gesturing to a simple chair that seemed molded from seamless graphite. Please, I understand the Dominion Council has reached a decision. Cathra settled into the chair, her forearms resting with deliberate calm. The Dominion, she said, her voice echoing slightly in the quiet room, has voted to extend an unprecedented offer. Full diplomatic recognition of humanity as a sovereign, independent civilization. A mutual non-aggression pact. Open channels for cultural and limited scientific exchange. She produced a data crystal, its surface etched with the intricate sigils of the High Chancellor's office. It glimmered on the table between them, a tiny monument to galactic power making its first concession in 3,000 years. This contains the formal charter. We propose an era of peaceful coexistence. Vasquez did not reach for the crystal. She did not even glance at it. Her dark eyes remained fixed on Cathra, and in their depths, the Admiral saw not triumph, not gratitude, but a weary, profound understanding. It was the look of a mathematician who has just been handed the answer to a problem she solved decades prior. We appreciate the gesture, Admiral, Vasquez said, her voice soft but unyielding as neutronium. And we recognize the significant shift in policy it represents for the Dominion. A cold tremor, subtle but undeniable, traced its way down Cathra's spine. There was a but hanging in the sterile air, larger than any warship. However, Vasquez continued, confirming the dread, humanity must respectfully decline. The words hung between them. Decline. To refuse submission was one thing. To refuse the hand of fellowship from the galaxy's sole superpower was something else entirely. It was a rejection of the cosmic order itself. Dr. Vasquez, Cathra said, struggling to keep her primary eyes from betraying her shock. This offer is without precedent. It grants you safety, legitimacy, access to technologies that could advance your civilization by millennia. Why would you refuse? Vasquez leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped on the table. Admiral, for 42 years, our greatest project has not been building starships or railguns. It has been sociology. The sociology of the Galactic Dominion. We have analyzed every first contact, every integration, every diplomatic annexation in your history. The pattern is unequivocal. Recognition is followed by observation. Observation is followed by cultural and economic integration. Integration creates dependency. Dependency becomes assimilation. Within 3 generations, the unique identity, the self-determination of the species is smoothed over, added to the registry, made part of the whole. She paused, letting the analysis, so chillingly accurate, settle. Your offer is not for coexistence, Admiral. It is the first, most sophisticated move in a longer, gentler conquest. We have seen this game played out 100 times. We have no interest in being players in it. Cathra felt the foundations of her mission crumbling. They had anticipated defiance, negotiation, perhaps even arrogance. They had not anticipated this depth of historical insight, this wholesale rejection of the galactic narrative. You condemn your people to isolation, to facing every future threat alone. Are we alone? Vasquez asked, a hint of that unreadable smile returning. We have the void, we have our intellect, and we have the demonstrated capability to defend what is ours. You speak of future threats, but from our analysis, the greatest threat to humanity for the last half-century has been the Galactic Dominion and the expansionist species within its sphere. That threat has now been neutralized, not by treaty, but by demonstrated consequence. The statement was delivered without malice, as a simple fact. It was more devastating than any boast. Humanity viewed the Dominion not as a benefactor or a ruler, but as a contained threat. What do you want, then? Cathra asked, the question laid bare, stripped of diplomatic pretense. Nothing from you, Vasquez replied. Nothing from the Dominion. We want the freedom to grow at our own pace in our own direction, to make our own mistakes and reap our own triumphs. We will explore because curiosity is in our bones. We will communicate with other species we encounter, on terms of mutual respect and equality. We will trade if it benefits both parties. But we will not join. We will not be absorbed. Our destiny is ours to write. Cathra stared at the human woman, this representative of a species that had looked upon the vast, glittering empire of 1,000 stars and had simply said, "No, thank you." It was an act of spiritual and political defiance so absolute it bordered on the sublime. In that moment, she finally understood the true nature of the threat and the opportunity that humanity represented. They were not just a new military power. They were a new idea. The idea that independence was not a phase to be outgrown, but a state of being worth any price. And if the Dominion cannot accept this? Cathra heard herself ask, the Admiral in her seeking the final parameter of the problem. Vasquez's gaze never wavered. Then nothing changes, Admiral. You know our capabilities. You have seen our resolve. The equation remains. Any hostile action will be met with disproportionate, devastating response. You may choose to begin that equation. You will not choose how it ends. The meeting was over. There were no further arguments, no negotiations. The data crystal, containing the might and majesty of the Dominion's concession, remained on the table, untouched, a relic of an old way of thinking. As Cathra was escorted back to the Accord, she felt not anger, but a staggering sense of historical vertigo. She had not just failed in a diplomatic mission. She had witnessed the end of one age and the cold, quiet birth of another. Back on her flagship, orbiting a safe distance from the Sol system, Cathra performed her final duty. She opened the complete species registry, navigating to the newly created entry for humanity. The blinking cursor mocked her. How did one categorize a singularity? Her forearms moved with deliberate, heavy precision. She deleted the draft entry and began a new species. Human, Homo sapiens, homeworld, Earth, Sol 3, Sol system. Technological profile. Paradoxical/deceptive. Surface indicators suggest pre-FTL industrial civilization. Verified capabilities include relativistic kinetic weaponry, rail/Gauss systems, quantum entanglement-grade fleet coordination, strategic stealth exceeding Dominion Tier 7, predictive tactical modeling of exceptional depth and accuracy. Technology appears purpose-built for asymmetric defense and intelligence synthesis. Assessment. Technological categorization is irrelevant. Their strategic adaptation rate is their primary asset. Military capability. Extreme defensive posture. Demonstrated ability to neutralize superior forces with zero casualties. Do not mistake technological appearance for capability. They do not possess a fleet. They possess a distributed, intelligent weapon system. Political status. Absolute sovereign independence. Has rejected Dominion recognition and non-aggression pact. No interest in integration or galactic political structures. Motivated by preservation of autarky and self-determined development. Threat assessment. If provoked, maximum, existential. Will respond with overwhelming, meticulously planned force aimed at catastrophic deterrence. Probability of successful conventional conquest. Negligible. If left unmolested, minimal. No expansionist ambitions detected. Primary focus appears to be internal development and passive observation. Special notes. First confirmed species to achieve decisive military victory against Dominion-level forces while maintaining a technologically inferior facade. Exhibits long-term strategic patience measured in decades. Operational security is flawless. Critical directive. Do not underestimate. Do not engage. Observe only from agreed distance. Any contact must be initiated by them. Their greatest weapon is not kinetic. It is knowledge. They have studied us for generations. We have only just begun to study them. Update. They have coined a term for their territory. Protected space. Treat this designation with the same gravitas as the Dominion Core System defense perimeter. She saved the entry. It was no longer just a file. It was a warning beacon, a quarantine notice for the soul of the Dominion. As she transmitted the update, she felt a profound exhaustion. The registry was no longer complete. It now contained a black box, an enigma that would sit at the edge of Dominion maps forever, not as a subject, but as a silent, watching neighbor on Earth. In a command center buried deep beneath a nondescript mountain range, Captain Sarah Chan watched the Accord's departure on a massive holoscreen. The mood was not celebratory. It was focused, like the quiet in a laboratory after a critical, successful experiment. The Dominion signature has crossed the heliopause, an analyst reported. No change in trajectory. No residual scans. It's a clean exit. Chin nodded. Status of the outer system monitor buoys? All stealth fields at full. They recorded the entire exchange. The data is being integrated into the Vasquez model now. The Vasquez model, the grand, unified theory of galactic politics, built from 40 years of stolen data and now, first-hand diplomatic experience. It would be updated, refined. The Dominion's reaction had been within predicted parameters. The next move was theirs. Captain, her intelligence officer said, a young man with eyes that had seen too many alien schematics. We're receiving a significant increase in directed comm laser traffic from 7 systems in the outer rim. Encrypted, but the routing signatures match known suppressed client species of the Dominion. The Cassari, the Taloni, the Vox Minorum. Content. Fragments we've decrypted are asking questions. About our tactics. About how we said no. They're not asking for help. They're asking for the blueprint. A slow smile spread across Captain Chen's face. This was the unanticipated variable, the ripple effect. It wasn't just the Dominion that had been watching. The galaxy's oppressed, its discontents, its quiet dreamers of freedom, had also seen the signal. A single, small blue world had not just defended itself. It had proven the Empire had a limit. Prepare a standard package, Chen ordered. The primer, historical context of human strategic theory, principles of asymmetric defense, the importance of intelligence supremacy and societal cohesion, include the declassified, non-technical analyses of the Vorak and Kronar engagements. Stress this is knowledge, not alliance. We are sharing a chapter of our story. They must write their own. Yes, Captain. And the Independence Project? Ahead of schedule. The Freedom and Defiance have begun space trials in the Oort cloud. Liberty and Determination will follow in 90 days. They're beautiful, Captain. Not warships. Not like anything in the registry. They're exploration vessels with teeth.
Fast, stealthy, incredibly smart.
They can run, hide, or fight with equal efficiency. Chun turned from the galactic map to a live feed from the shipyard. The Freedom filled the screen, sleek and angular, its hull a non-reflective black that seemed to drink the light. It didn't look like a primitive's attempt at a starship. It looked like the future. A future humanity had designed for itself, in its own image. Good, she whispered. The age of hiding is over. The age of being left alone has begun. Now we see what's really out there. In the Dominion Council, the news of humanity's rejection was met with stunned silence, then volcanic outrage. Councillor Vexith advocated for immediate, total embargo, a cordon sanitaire of warships around the Sol system. Councillor Jector of the Kronar, humiliated and seething, demanded the human homeworld be declared a rogue state, its exploration vessels marked for destruction on sight. High Chancellor Mordak let the storm rage. When the chamber finally exhausted itself, he spoke, his ancient voice a dry rustle that commanded absolute attention. You speak of blockades and declarations, he said. You speak as if we are dealing with the Zephyrians or the Mandari. We are not. Admiral Cathra's final report is clear. Humanity has not won a battle. It has changed the state of the game. They have moved the goal of interaction from integration to recognition of separate existence. To attack them now is not to punish defiance. It is to validate their entire worldview, that the Dominion is, at its core, a predator that can only be managed by force. We would be fighting not just their ships but their idea. And ideas, as we are learning, are harder to kill than dreadnoughts. He leaned forward, his multifaceted eyes scanning the assembled councillors. We will do nothing. We will withdraw all patrols from a 100 light-year buffer around the Sol system. We will label it a zone of sovereign observation. We will watch. We will learn. And we will hope that in time, their curiosity outweighs their suspicion. Perhaps in a century or two they will be ready to talk. On their terms. It was the ultimate quiet capitulation. Not to force but to a new, uncomfortable truth. The Dominion's manifest destiny had met an immovable object. The galaxy, once a map to be filled, now contained a permanent, sovereign blank space. Years later, on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force vessel Freedom, Captain Sarah Chan, retired, now a senior advisor, watched the starfield streak into lines of light. The Freedom was passing the boundary of what star charts were now calling the human perimeter, heading into the deep, unknown black on her screen. A live feed showed the Earth, a dwindling blue marble. Beside it, a data window displayed the latest intelligence summary. The primer had been received, translated, and was circulating in a dozen alien languages across the outer rim. There were reports of small, desperate uprisings. Most failed, but a few showed a chilling new sophistication. A Kasari mining colony had repelled a Vorak raid using improvised orbital mass drivers and clever sensor spoofing. The report noted the tactics were disturbingly reminiscent of human doctrine. The galaxy was changing. Not with a bang, but with a whisper of an idea that had started on a small blue world. You have a right to be Chen's first officer, a young woman who had been born after the Wisdom Eternal's first visit, approached. Advisor Chen, we're receiving a new signal from Dominion space. Tight beam on a diplomatic frequency. It's addressed to the Human Exploration Initiative. It's an invitation from a coalition of 6 minor species. They're forming something called the Autonomy Concord. They're asking if we would be willing to send an observer. Chun looked from the young officer's hopeful face to the infinite starfield ahead. They were no longer just defending. They were influencing. The responsibility was terrifying. Send a reply, she said, her voice firm. Tell them humanity will send an observer vessel. Its mission will be to witness, to learn, and to share only knowledge that empowers self-determination. Make it clear we are not leaders. We are fellow travelers. As the Freedom plunged deeper into the interstellar night, Chun felt the weight and the wonder of it all. They had wanted to be left alone, but in securing that right, they had become a beacon, a dangerous, hopeful beacon. The galaxy would never be the same, and humanity, forever changed by its long, lonely vigil in the dark, was finally ready to step into the light it had fought so hard to earn. Not as subjects, not as conquerors, but simply and powerfully as themselves.